much for joining me on my podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
I'm really honored to have you. You are brilliant in multiple areas, so I hope that we can get to some of that brilliance here in this conversation. If you could start by just telling me about yourself. I know that you've been a singer-songwriter, actually, of some renown for most of your career. So we're here probably mostly to talk about crypto and Web3, but I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about your history in media before crypto.
I started my career as a musician very young. I wrote and recorded my first album when I was about 15 in the UK. And I got very lucky, had a couple of charting singles in the UK and started touring. And that's basically been my career from teenage through adulthood. But in 2012, I was on tour and I was going through England and I was looking at Bitcoin and I was like, I really wanted to buy some Bitcoin. I had a cousin who had bought some Bitcoin, but it was like, go to the red telephone box under the train station, send your money to the Japanese exchange. 6 weeks later, they'll send you your keys. And I was like, what the fuck is this? It was complicated. I was on tour. So I was like, I'm not going to be here in 6 weeks. And I was like, okay, so I'm also a child. So I was like, well, let me figure it out. But I was trying at the time. I was like, maybe I can afford just a couple of Bitcoin. And so a few years later, 2015 came around and I was actually on tour again then. But one of my brothers got into Web3 and crypto. So we were talking about blockchain and again, just the tech and the evolution of the tech. And so as a musician, in parallel to this, I love having the freedom to create. I love music, and a lot of the industries around music are complicated and at the moment very broken. They've been broken for decades. But with the advent of streaming, what we've had is when we don't buy CDs anymore, there's a lot less income that goes into the labels, the artists' hands, etc. I mean, they're still finding other ways to monetize, but those CDs that artists could just sell on the road if they were independent and make a living are now gone. And so what we have is a very, very small amount of money that reaches artists on streaming sites. So a lot of people don't know this, but when an artist gets 1 million plays on Spotify, if they own the whole song, they own all of the rights, everything, they make about $3,600 for 1 million plays. Now to get to 1 million plays, you have to invest money in Facebook ads or tour, which can be $1,000 a day to be on tour, for a small band to medium band. So, and I'm talking about not big stages and tours. So the industry itself has been very hard on artists and broken for a long time. Monetization has been very limited for artists. So most musicians, people don't know this, are struggling to eat, struggling to live, have multiple jobs, and don't have time to create. Because if they want to get their music far and wide, and if they want those 1 million plays on Spotify, they have to reach millions of people online just so that they'll go listen to their music. So then they become full-time content creators. So living this experience as a musician, I was very lucky. I write and produce for movie soundtracks, for commercials as well, and I make a lovely income doing that. But at the same time, the existence of being a musician, where you're constantly posting on social media, where you're constantly running your own business, it's just you become a full-time entrepreneur. And so as I'm in parallel exploring blockchain technology, I'm like, well, this is actually very interesting because what blockchain tech does, it's a decentralized ledger technology. So it's a permanent ledger, permanent as our tech is now, online, where you can automate a lot of things with smart contracts and NFTs, which means cool, there's some cool capability there. So that's sort of step one, I got interested. I progressed with my music career. The online creator economy, people are posting more, attention spans are dwindling, artists are more and more miserable. The pandemic hits. It's like, now we can't even tour to make money. What's going on? And in that time, I'd also joined Nachi, like Fibonacci's golden ratio, as artist in residence. And Deanna McFatter had brought me in to be artist in residence because Nachi builds AI leverage tech that can help disrupt different industries. So I realize this is probably a lot of different tangents, but long story short, I start working at Nachi, just, part-time. I'm just extra things that I'm doing, helping basically with the structure of the music business, with what artists need, with how are we existing and how can we improve our setup. So we start fleshing out these apps that they have more and tailoring them more to entertainment. Which they already were, and there's some fantastic tech there. And more working with Nachi, ended up just getting sucked in to the whole dynamic, which has been great. And now I run the Web3 division at Nachi. And so how this all comes together is basically musicians are living these lives where we have to run our business and be full-time entrepreneurs. The creator economy of posting on social media is great for artists to get out there. The problem is it's so time consuming that doing constantly posting and creating content every day, as well as running your business, your tours, your music, managing people, as well as writing the music, is quite a brutal experience. So as I started to work with Nachi, we were looking at all of these problems that we could solve in the music industry to help artists navigate. And with the advent of Web3 technology that I'd then been following for years, there seemed to be some very interesting and clear use cases where we could help solve some of these problems. Not just for artists, but brands, businesses. Actually moving a portion of your business setup to the blockchain can help in tremendous ways. Now, that's essentially where we got to. And so combining music and the problem solving that we were doing also led us to go, okay, let's build this huge music platform on the blockchain, which incorporates NFTs and helps musicians move their businesses and make use of the tech so they can move their businesses to Web3 and actually utilize a lot of the great tech that Web3 can provide.
Awesome.
What we have now is a landscape where a lot of people are caught up in NFTs, but they don't really understand what NFTs do, what NFTs can do, the tech of it. So you have a lot of big brands like, we're going to do an NFT drop of a bunch of pictures. And I'm like, that doesn't serve your business. It doesn't help your customers. It's just jumping on a trend. If you understand the fundamentals of blockchain and just simple utility behind NFTs, instead of trying to cram yourself into this trend of NFT collectibles, look at the tech and understand how the tech can actually help enhance your business and use it to give better value to your customers. So with that entire mindset, it seemed like, I accidentally found myself at this incredible intersection of music, the music businesses I'd been running, Nachi, the AI tech that we're building, and being deep in Web3, where I accidentally became an influencer, for lack of a better word, in 2020, 2021, from just wanting to help people get into it and posting on TikTok, because I was killing every dinner party during the pandemic. It's like, tell us about blockchain. And I'm like, you're all going to fall asleep and there's going to be more questions. We get more questions. So anyway, so that's how, through speaking and doing TikToks, I've obviously been speaking at a lot of conferences and doing partnerships with different blockchains and working with different projects and consulting with different businesses on how the tech can apply to them and how to move your business over to Web3 and actually do it in a way that works and benefits your business and customers. And that's sort of been the whole picture around how we've been building our music platform too. We've taken the music, the problems, the solutions that we're using in Web2, and all the solutions we can bring in Web3 to create something that helps musicians give them their time back, benefit from the automation, the sustainability, the utility, the monetization in Web3 to radically change the way they live, to radically change the way their fans experience things, and to put that holistic balance back into the music industry so creators can create. So that's the music side of things. And then obviously, I work in the tech side and other things. I'm still a full-time musician. Full-time. I still have my music, my EPs and my albums coming out. But yes, with regards to Web3, I think that's where we've gotten to.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that comprehensive overview. And we're going to dive obviously in greater depth into all of that because it's really complex and nuanced, but also new and innovative. So part of this podcast is to kind of educate people on the next frontier. And you're really working on the next frontier. I feel like in the space that people are most excited about in terms of Web3, which is allowing for creatives to actually, it seems like, have more ownership and control over their art and their career. So we can have a better culture, right? Like we can actually have artists who are talented get their work out there, have it be seen, and have their fans support them in the way that the fans really want them supported, which is giving them enough resources, it seems like, to actually sustain themselves. So can you talk a little bit about the technology of crypto, this idea of the distributed ledger, and how that actually benefits artists? It strikes me that there's something about being able to track what you do, like your intellectual property, over different contexts and maybe decentralizing the power of platforms like Spotify so that you can actually gain some control over where your music goes and how you profit from it. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would add another layer to that, which is that right now, let's say you're a musician and you want to monetize different things that you do naturally, right? Musicians have always had copies of their music. So whether it's vinyl, tape, CD, MP3s, like we've always had something that someone can sort of take, whether it's with an album art or a poster or whatever, they have that. We've had touring, we've had concerts, we have fan clubs. There's so many different avenues that musicians engage in naturally, just holistically in our ecosystems. And what happens is that when you look at Web2, your streaming goes to Spotify. If you want to have kind of a fan club membership model, you go to Patreon. If you want to sell your merch, maybe you go to Shopify. If you want to connect with your fans, you have to go to Instagram. And all of these things are subject to their setups, their algorithms, their backend, their percentages, and different logins for everything, and managing different platforms everywhere. So think about it like this. If you are an artist, you're like, I want to grow and I want to connect with my audience. I go on Instagram, and we all know that Instagram only shows your stuff to maybe 2 to 7% of your audience at the moment. So you've toured the world, you've gotten all these people to come to your Instagram, and you're like, fuck, I can't even reach them now. And yet you picked up a lot of these fans by actually playing concerts and being in person with them. That took years and hard work, and here they are, they can't even see you anymore. So there's a lot of engagement that gets lost. There's a lot of connection that gets lost. And having these apps in the middle, there's a lot of great utility that they can offer. But the problem is that they can also squash and completely limit the very utility that they're trying to offer. So connect with your fans on Instagram, but actually don't. Only 2 to 7% of your fans connect with, unless you're insanely posting viral content and hoping your fans will see 1 out of 7 of the pieces, for example. So there's basically that aspect to it where there's resistance. And if you said, okay, anyone who's a fan of mine, just connect your crypto wallet to whatever I'm going to build. So for example, people have a crypto wallet. You can have your own platform, your own setup, where people can connect their crypto wallet to you, or you have their info. Let's say people buy an NFT. Let's say I make a huge collection of NFTs. Anyone who buys an NFT is now in my ecosystem. Whatever I want to send you, you will receive in your wallet. I'm not going to fight an algorithm. I'm not going to fight Instagram. You're not going to squash anything. If I want to send you a free ticket to a show, or if I want to send you a collectible, or if I want to send you whatever, I have direct access to you, and I can send you stuff. Now, obviously, artists then don't want to bombard their fans, and someone could say, well, that's like a mailing list. It is, but you have such an attention fight for mailing lists currently and where emails are at. And it's different just putting in your email address to actually saying, I am a fan, I'm purchasing an NFT because I want to be a part of this community and ecosystem. So I'm now open to receiving things. And so there's a different choice that goes into it. And there's a different connection between the artist and the fan who's choosing to engage in a more meaningful way. So there's that. The second thing is, yes, there's more financial sovereignty, for example. So those million plays I talked about on Spotify, you have to reach millions and millions of people to get people to come in, for example, if you're a new artist, to try out new music, see if they like it, and then build up to 1 million plays. Let's say you have 100 fans that fucking love you and that are like, I love everything you do. I just want you to put out more music because I just want more music. Now, let's say you have 10,000 other fans, but you have 100 that are truly engaged. You could sell 50 NFTs of something very cool. And I'm not saying it's not about the NFT. It's about what are you actually giving your fans? Are you giving them like access to private concerts? Are you giving them a cool membership? Are you giving them like limited edition releases of things, whether it's shirts or vinyl or whatever? What is this? So let's say you could sell something really cool as a package to these 100 people who are like, yo, I would spend fucking $150 to go to several concerts, get a hoodie, get this collectible, you know what I mean? Like to be part of this membership. A year, I would do that. Okay, cool. You could sell 50 of those NFTs at that price, or you could sell 100 NFTs at like 0.8 ETH or $80. And essentially within a certain price range of that, between $150 to $50 or 50 NFTs to 100 NFTs, essentially selling 50 NFTs could get you the same $3,600 that you would get from 1 million plays on Spotify. But those 1 million plays on Spotify took a tremendous amount of time, energy, Facebook ads, figuring out Facebook ads, content creation, posting online, telling people about the song, like everybody get in, everybody get in. So it's basically saying, instead of having to reach billions of people to get millions of people to stream you, to make thousands of dollars, do those things, put your stuff out, use Web2 for exposure, but know that there is a diehard potentially set of fans that actually just want to engage and want cooler experiences. And you can, in addition, get more financial sovereignty by creating awesome experiences for these people who want to engage. And you can engage with them in a more meaningful way and generate more income doing that. Because currently on Spotify, you can have someone who has just discovered you yesterday and is playing your song on repeat, or someone who's been a diehard fan for years playing the same song on repeat. And you have no idea that one person is a complete diehard fan and would love more value and would love more shows, and the other person is a passive listener that's just going to listen to this one song. We have no way of really differentiating between our fan bases online and Web2 now. And being able to do that allows us to then provide that value, engage in different ways, offer exciting things that we can then create simply with NFTs, with blockchain tech, and send to our fans without having to then go through 18 different apps in the meantime to be like, well, Patreon, and Patreon's limited to these, that make whatever you want in an NFT, like sell a shoe, do you know what I mean? Or just do handprints, pictures, and send them for free to all of your followers. The possibilities are endless, which means you then don't need to silo it into all of these apps in the same way.
Yeah, that's really great. And I want to just follow up on this train of thought, because I think there's something really fascinating about the idea of an NFT. And it seems like what I've heard is kind of like, it's a way of kind of digitally owning something, or like claiming, like tracking that you own something digitally, which for diehard fans is meaningful, right? Like when Beyonce's album came out, like I immediately bought the vinyl because I was like, I want to have a piece of Beyonce and be able to say that I will always have it. It's never going to go away from me. And incidentally, right, that was right before she took that little sample track from Khalees on there. So now it's like super,
oh yeah,
you know? And is that the same idea behind NFTs, that like fans feel like they have something special that's more than just something that's like on a platform that everyone has access to?
Well, it's interesting because yes and no. So the yes of, well, in fact, let's start with the no of that. The no of that is that NFTs are simply a file type, right? So it's a new version of the internet where we can do more things with the files. So basically going, okay, anything that was in the physical realm, you know, letters became emails, for example, right? This is the same thing. Things that are physical that get moved to digital, which is a lot of things. We saw photos go to digital, music went from CDs to MP3s, you know, movies go to streaming. Everything's moving to digital. And we're seeing the metaverse, assets. So many things are going digital. With that, we still didn't have a way to authenticate digital things. So let's say a contract for a house, instead of having huge piles of paperwork and you have to take the contract here and take the contract there, let's just do it by email. Well, email's not necessarily that secure. And what happens if people take it and hack it and replicate it and blah, blah, blah. Okay, NFT tech, the fact that you can authenticate digital files creates an extra layer of security and means you can now track authentic files, which actually has infinite use cases. Voting systems will be using NFTs. Your votes will be NFTs. Instead of having voter fraud and this and that, you will have your vote attributed to who you are, your address, you go, no one can fuck with it. At this point, obviously, security is increasing and blockchain tech is maturing, but the whole point is you would have your vote registered to you, it's authenticated, you cast your vote, that's done. Everyone can see the authentic vote tied to you. So the use cases are infinite, and it's actually just a way that we are authenticating all things digital, which is important in a world where you can rip and burn and hack anything, and so a lot of things lose value. With that said, you can then also get creative, which is then what we do. We say, well, collectibles exist, art exists, and so that also gets benefited from NFT tech. So artists who are digital artists who've been like, I'm working really hard to make this beautiful piece of digital art, and the world is moving digital. So it's like, well, look, I've spent ages making this piece of art and it's online and everyone can just share it. And so I can't get paid for it, which means I now have to get another job to live, which means I don't have time to create, which means my art means jack shit. Well, now that you have NFTs and you can authenticate that, and people can now buy authentic copies of digital art, artists can now sell their work, they can validate their work in that way, they can build their story, they can have limited editions. And I'm talking about just strictly art. Digital artists are artists, and saying things like, you know, this digital art is bullshit, only physical art is real art, is like saying that fine art is the only real art and modern art can suck a dick. Like, it just doesn't exist. And the truth is, evolution happens. And as evolution happens, we go with it. So right now we've progressed into digital art, and there's plenty of beautiful digital art. How are you going to hang it in your house? There are NFT screens that are like half an inch thick that you can stick to your wall and have rotating art that you bought on display, which can be very beautiful. So with that said, it does have this broad use case, which is going to affect every single industry on the planet. And I think most people don't actually fully grasp what the tech is going to do and what the tech does. And then it really helps with collectibles, with memberships, with businesses, with business structures. So DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, gives people the right to participate. So an example there is, you'd be like, okay, are we going to buy a building? And there's room for 100 people to be a part of this group that buys a building. And I'm going to sell 100 shares. Each one is going to be an NFT. So people can go, okay, this is my NFT. This is my share of this 100th of this project, of this building. The price of the NFT will go towards buying the building. So 100 people buy NFTs. That money all goes to buying a building. And then you basically, how you're going to manage the building, sell it, rent it out, etc., is all voting. So you're then able to vote, and you're able to vote easily and seamlessly because of, again, smart contracts and how everything's built. So there's so many different uses for this. And I think where a lot of big brands are failing is they're missing the mark. Like I said, instead of realizing that this tech can actually enhance their businesses and help their customers and give more value, what they're doing is going, NFTs are images. Quick, how can we jam our business into an image? And I'm like, you're missing the point. I will throw in that there is also a dark side to the blockchain, because it's really easy to talk about innovative tech and say, this is amazing, everyone should do it. But I think anytime new tech comes around, we also have to be mindful and know that it is going to be what we make it. The same way AI is going to be who we are and what we make it. And so with blockchain tech, governments all want to have digital currencies that they can control, that they can see everything that you're doing. So this tech, if governments then just decide the dollar is now going to be digital, and each person's account is no one's going to be anonymous. And whenever you buy stuff, we can track you and we can stop you buying stuff. And now paper money is out of circulation. And the future is you have digital money and the government can stop where and when you buy. That is a very scary prospect. And there are many dystopian potentials that are coming to that, the same way that there are with AI. So I strongly encourage anyone to realize this is a new version of the internet. There is tremendous tech and utility, and to encourage people to participate and build. Because the internet as we know it today is made up of people who decided to do that. And as we can see, now we have bigger powers, like Google is a superpower in itself, as is Facebook in itself, in terms of this world of digital perception, marketing, sales. Amazon, it's controlled by large entities. So the innovation we bring now will dictate what those powers look like in future. And yes, money will continue to dictate. And yes, power will continue to be what humanity fights over until we educate our children and our societies in a whole different way of living. But for now, in the Western world, that's what we're doing. Globally, that's how we are as humans. So I want people to know that whatever they put in, they can help shape the future. So if you have ideas, do it, and know that if we just leave this tech to anyone else, well, yeah, governments and people just have their way. But if you make an alternative, you could then help to build something special.
I love that. You're speaking my language. I'm all about building alternatives. It's what I've spent my career doing in the Web 2 era, and then running up against a lot of the issues that you were talking about with Web 2, in terms of just the lack of control from creative people and entrepreneurs over their work. And you're right that like Web3 offers more control, but then the question is kind of who has the control, right? Like, do you want the government to know everything that you purchase? Like, it may say like it depends on the government, right? And for most people, there's going to be someone in government who they don't want to know what they're buying. But that is where the U.S. federal government seems to be headed. The central bank digital currency seems like by next year they're going to really start trying to implement that, and other countries already are as well. Some of those countries are countries where people are losing freedoms because their governments are tracking everything that they do, and it really inhibits their ability to do what they need to do. So I love that you're really pulling this conversation towards power. And I want to ask you about, how do you talk to companies right now about this? Because right now, we don't really know what the government's doing behind the scenes, but it seems like companies are in the US getting into this. How do you talk to them about the ways it can improve their business? It seems like part of what you're saying is it changes the way they think about their customers, so that their customers can kind of like be more active participants in the business or something, because you can authenticate who are your best customers and empower them maybe, or something. But yeah, talk a little bit more about what the value proposition is for at least the private market.
Well, I think it's exactly that, really. It's down to value proposition. And so I think that, let's say Starbucks, I use them as an example because you have plenty of big brands that are like, we're going to do images, collectibles. And everyone's like that. We don't really care, because cool that you are celebrating 50 years of being in business and you're doing images to celebrate that. And if I'm a diehard fan, maybe I get them. But what do I get besides that? Starbucks, on the other hand, what they did was extremely basic, but it was great to see a company actually use utility and smart contract utility with their NFTs. So Starbucks are like, we have a reward system that's on Web 2 right now. We're going to do NFTs that are essentially a reward system. So when you buy your NFT, it's then going to track your behavior, which is great for blockchain tech. That's what it can do really well. So track your behavior and your purchases, and it can help then track your rewards. That's a really simple thing to move. Well, simple. It's a very simple concept to move to blockchain, because it's making the most of what the tech can do making the most. It's a base layer of what the tech can do. It's very simple, but now you can move your reward system to the blockchain so you can track things more efficiently, and you can also automate more. So if you want to airdrop just free things to everyone, it's very easy for you to do, or it's very immediate for you to do as Starbucks. Like, we want to send everyone a free coffee today. We're just going to boom, send that. Now, yes, you can do that in Web 2 with your reward system, but it's a different process. And it's a more complex process to set this up. Whereas people, if you just have a crypto wallet, you put your NFT in your crypto wallet, that's it, you're connected. It's not a different login for every different company. You can just connect your one wallet to it. So with that said, just Starbucks using a very basic form of NFT utility has shown that they've gone, how can we use blockchain tech to enhance an experience in our business? Well, number one, it'll be simpler for people to just buy an NFT and hold that. And then, they can receive things or show their NFTs places, and we're going to give them different experiences. So for all our coffee lovers, we might have coffee parties, or we're going to do special roasts and different things. It's like your ticket, then your membership. And it can serve a few more things than just the Web 2 reward system. Now, there's so many things you can do in Web 2 that you can do in Web 3. And for anyone in here who'd be like, well, actually, you can do all of these things in Web 2. Yes, but it's less efficient, less automated, less seamless, and it takes a lot more management to run and do. And there are more third parties, for example. Starbucks are building their own platform. So for them in particular here, they'd be like, right, our NFTs will sit on our platform, we can manage it, etc. But I would say that every company is different. Every company has a different value proposition. Every company has different things that they offer their customers and different things they want to offer their customers. Even if they go, we're offering everything we want, we don't want to change that, they could potentially use some blockchain tech to help their back-end systems. Maybe it's automating. So there are so many different things that people can do with blockchain tech. It just, again, the reason I also consult for different companies is because there isn't a one size fits all. There is, for example, hey, you have a reward system. Yeah, consider moving it over to the blockchain. It'll help you connect with your consumer base, them connect with you. Yes, you'll have the access to the data. You'll be able to automate certain things. On the other hand, there are companies that are like, well, actually, we have access to all of these events. And I'm like, great, you don't need to do a reward system. You can have an NFT that basically gives your consumers access to all of these extra things that they never thought about simply because you have these setups and partnerships. So really depends on the company. It's case by case basis. And I would say every company has a different value proposition. Every company has a different value add to their current customers and to their new customers. And so looking at that and going, this is your company, this is what you do. You don't need to change it unless you want to, but how can you use this tech to enhance all of those capabilities and all of your engagement, for example, with your audience, and help grow or even sustain more efficiently?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating how you're kind of going into all these different businesses and corners and realizing that it's a different model for each one. I think my brother was telling me that in New York City, there's like a club that he goes to where he bought an NFT to get like priority access to the club so that he could skip the line and never have to pay for the cover ever again because it was a really hot club. And for him, it was worth it because he was like, well, if I'm going to go this many times, sometimes I don't even get in. So if I just buy this NFT, I know I'm going to get in and I'm like a privileged customer. I'm curious about, I study Hollywood and how might this, I don't know if you've thought about this. This is just a random question that wasn't in our pre interview question set, but like, have you thought about how this might change the Hollywood business? For me, I'm wondering about this like streaming landscape and like shows are kind of going off air and maybe people can buy a show as an NFT to like always have it so it doesn't ever go off platform for them. Like HBO just took off a whole bunch of shows and maybe those streamers would notice, oh, everyone's buying this NFT, so maybe we shouldn't take it off or maybe we should order another season. If you buy it, you can get another season or something like that. Do you think, does that seem like a possible scenario to you?
Absolutely. I mean, if we just say one simple broad element of it is if you wanted to buy a show now, you kind of have to go buy the DVD, right? Or Blu-ray, but I might not have a DVD player. So actually we're just in a dodgy haircut phase of like being between two technologies. And so it's like, well, then do I go buy it on iTunes? But what if it's not available on iTunes? Then I have to buy the CD, the DVD, but then I'm like, but I don't have a DVD player anymore. So then you think, okay, well then what's the equivalent to a DVD, but digital? It's an NFT, right? It's simply, then it's not about it being collectible. It's just, oh, we've moved everything over to digital. How can we make this a copy that you bought? Well, it's copy number 3064 and it's an NFT. And so we can track that. So that's just a way of people then saying, instead of selling the DVD, you sell the equivalent number as NFTs and then people can buy and download it. And that's just the way we're moving into new tech. Other ways it can work in the movie industries is, there's so many different ways actually. And some of my initial consulting calls were with people who are like, I want to create this movie. What can I do with the NFTs? And I'm like, well, you're raising money for the movie, for example. You could have people, you have your script. You can have people vote on the script, buy NFTs, and they can vote on the script if you want. If you don't want to give them that creative control, fine. They can buy NFTs of different characters, for example, and you can then recreate those characters in metaverses, and you might have the right to be that character in a metaverse. Or you can just have people, you can set it up like a decentralized autonomous organization and say there's only 1,000 shares that I'm going to sell of this movie, for example, that will equate 49% of the movie or whatever, or 100%, whatever you want to do. And these 1,000 people will buy it and they'll actually end up crowdfunding it. But because of blockchain tech, you can also say, I'm selling it all even pieces. Whatever money the movie makes, you will automatically get sent your shares of income to your crypto wallets, because again, that's what blockchain tech can do. It's like you buy the NFT, and if you are registered to receive a certain percentage of the income, you will automatically receive that in your wallet. You don't have to chase people up to get paid. We can cover that a bit more clearly in a following example, but essentially you can crowdfund the movies. You can have people that have shared ownership of the movie. You can have people vote on the movie. You can have people buy into characters. There's so many things that you can do it's just, then we get creative, right? So something that I've done over the last 2 years now is really want to push the envelope. So for example, a stupid fun fact is that about 2 years ago, I sold the first ever guitar solo NFT on the blockchain. And it's because I was like, oh, there's so many firsts you can do and we can be creative. I was like, let me just throw this up and have fun with it. And it sold. I was amazed because you also have people who are like, took a long time for NFTs to catch on, and we're still figuring out adoption, right? How people can learn about the space and get comfortable with it. But it's not a different space. I think that's what I try and tell people. It's human behavior exists in Web3 the same way it exists in Web2. It's just that not that many people are in Web3 yet, and not that many corporations are controlling Web3 yet. So you can actually get away with just having community-built things. As more things move over, human behavior is just going to come into Web3, and it will be about awareness, marketing, what's in your face, what value you're being. It's all the same stuff. However, we have an opportunity now to simply not bring a lot of the problems that we're experiencing in Web2 into this new version of the internet, and focus on ways we might be able to do things better or differently to help be creative with how industries will be run. For example, the film industry, and creative on how people make money. So how you're funding films, or how you're funding music, or how actors are making a living. So it goes, yes, from the utilitarian fundamentals of selling copies of stuff will then be digital, to the creative and curated collectible market as well.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
And everything.
So yeah, you mentioned that you might want to follow up on that mechanism of like, I buy something and I can get subsequent payments. So I think that we can talk about that a little bit more. I'm thinking about, crowdfunding. I've helped so many artists crowdfund over the years, and it's just a donation, right? It's just like a gift. So you can maybe get someone to give you $25 because they're not really expecting anything in return. And then there's this like gap between that and like crowd investing, where you have to be like giving a certain amount, or, a certain kind of accredited investor or whatever. And then people think about it differently, when they're like, oh, this is crowd investing. You really invest in like a company rather than like a project. So it seems like it offers the space for people to support an individual project, but also feel like they have a stake in it. I've also heard of things like, oh, I could buy a movie. Like maybe the crowdfunding is you get a copy of the movie and then you can then rent it out or something yourself. And the original creator can also make money. So is that kind of like, does blockchain enable this kind of like payments are decentralized and they can kind of go different directions and it's all automatic? Is that kind of what you're saying?
It can be, but yes, I think that the shared ownership component, and you hit the nail on the head with it as well, in that there is, so if we split it into two categories, right? The categories I keep sort of harping on about. Number one is just utilitarian. As things move to digital, how do we sell copies of stuff or authenticate that things are real and track them and make sure there isn't fraud? NFTs do that. The second thing in this bucket is automation as well. When you go to buy something online, you go to buy an NFT, for example, when you send the money to purchase the NFT automatically gets sent to you. You don't have to then say, okay, I've paid you the money. Are you going to send me the file? Like, what's going to happen? So there's that element of automation that's helpful. And then we go into the idea of, okay, well, let's say you sell something that's collectible. It's not just base utilitarian anymore. You buy a piece of art from a digital artist that's growing and you love it and it's been hanging on your wall for ages. And now this artist has grown and blown up and it's worth a bit more and you'd like to sell it. Great. You sell it. You make all the profit. Okay, cool. However, with NFTs now, what the artist can do before they even sell it to you to begin with is they can say, look, I'm going to sell you this piece of art. But if you ever resell it, if I grow, I'm going to sell all my art maybe now for a lower price. But as I grow, I'll never see the upside on those initial pieces I ever sold. So if you then go to sell this piece of art to someone else, the artist can decide that anytime it gets sold to anyone in perpetuity for the rest of the existence of this piece of art, whenever it gets sold, they will automatically get paid a percentage of that sale price. So let's say you sell it for $10,000 and the artist has said, great, anytime someone sells it, I want to make 20%. They'll make $2,000 and that $2,000 will automatically be sent to their wallet. They then don't have to chase you up and be like, yo, where's my 20%? And then they don't have to keep track of people. So what that means is artists can now create stuff, put it in the world, let people make the upside. Artists can say, I don't want a percentage, or they can say, I want 2%, 10%, 5%, 50%, whatever it is, you bake in the percentage. Whoever buys the artwork sees that and is aware that if they ever want to resell, that's the amount that will go to the artist. If they buy the piece of artwork, that happens. And again, through time, over the course of 10 years, the artists are now able to make residual income and passive income, which can help them live and continue to create without being like, I've been stuck for a year. That means I can't eat. I'm stuck for a year, but at least I'm making passive income, which is helping me live and experience so I can get my head in and help myself get to the next stage of creativity, for example. So that's in terms of automating payments and how that can be helpful. And what that also does is, let's say we've covered that basic, what we also have is how do people participate? What's cool now is that with NFTs, because we were talking about that engagement that you can have with your fan base, right? You can just send them a free ticket to a show in an airdrop if you're a musician. So they've got their crypto wallet, they're holding your NFT, and you can see all my NFT holders, I'm going to send them something free today. And you can send them cool value for free. That's exciting for them. You're interacting with them in different ways. The way that can work in the inverse is that the consumer who's bought your NFT is like, great, I have this NFT, which does, like you're saying with your brother, might give them access to membership perks, might give them access to private shows, might give them a free t-shirt every time they go to a show. There are things that you can bake in as the artist to say, thank you for being a fan and a follower. I have the ability to connect with you. So I have the ability to have a membership or a fan club and actually just send you cool things. Or I simply can sell NFTs that help you skip inconveniences. You know, there's so many ways of doing it. And in the meantime, the artists, the fans or the consumers can be like, great, I hold this NFT. If this artist blows up, I would have helped be a part of that journey. And for example, sometimes artists blow up. You believed in them. You were there at the beginning. If you have an NFT from early days that gives you access to all sorts of shit, you now have something like you're saying that's a bit rare, that's a bit special, but it might give you access to great experiences with an artist that's actually now more expensive. It's harder to get tickets for the shows. They're selling out. But having been there early, not only did you help them by buying an NFT and helping them have a bit of financial sovereignty to keep creating instead of just fighting in the world of Web2 and attention grabbing, you're a part of their community, and you can also help be a part of their growth. You can benefit later as well from then getting access and all the cool things which might be harder to get. Or if you're like, you know what, I'm really happy, I've seen all the concerts I need to see, I want to sell this NFT, you could then potentially make some income. And so to me as an artist, it's one of the most beautiful ways to say thank you to your fan bases. We get up on stages and we go, thank you to my fans. But when you're a musician and you live in that, the weight of people actually listening to your shit, the same faces you see on your socials every day, the same faces that you see at concerts, it really does move you. And you really do want to say thank you. And right now, if I wanted to say thanks to 100 diehard fans that I know have been with me on the road for years, I'm like, what was your handle? What was your handle? You were in email. I can't track them. I can't find them. I'd have to go through my whole email list and then try and track and then link the email address to the name and then that handle to this. It's just very complicated to do. Web3 will make that a lot simpler for you to just see who's doing what, help you participate, help you engage and interact, and help your fans be a part of your community and a part of your success, a part of your building, and along for the ride, which is fucking cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can imagine probably every artist is going to do this at some point, right? When you start out, you just have a edition of NFTs. And then, you know, if in 10 years, all of a sudden you're Beyonce, everyone is going to want that original set of NFTs. And it's going to make fans want to support artists because all of a sudden they can get something out of it too, whether it's the continued access to that exclusive community, or let's say I'm a fan and I just fall on hard times. I know I have an asset that I can sell to like support me in my hard time. So it's ways that like artists are supporting fans and fans are supporting artists. It sounds ideal. It sounds like a way that we can start to really center the people who are making our culture go, which are the people who love the culture and the people who make the culture. But you kind of were hinting before about like, but you know, we've seen this in the past where like there's this democratic potential, and then like companies or big money people come in and kind of mess it up a little bit. So I wanted to prod you a little bit on like where you're feeling concerned about where this might be going. You know, it's early, so maybe like 10 years, 20 years from now. But also if you have a follow-up to what I just said, please answer that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also the school of thought where people will be like, supporting the artist and getting the music is enough. I don't need something in return. And I fully support that as well. It's like if, you know, a friend loves you and they want to give you a gift and you're like, thank you. But then the day you want to give them a gift back, they're like, no, I don't need that gift. And it's like, yes, but I love you. And that's also how I show love. So there's that aspect of it too, where, you know, you don't have to want to get something back, obviously, from it. What's cool now is that even if you don't want something back, what's cool is being able to bet on your beliefs, and being able to, in fact, that's not even about wanting something back. It's just me going that. So yeah, so you don't necessarily need to want something back. You can just want to support, and that's cool too. NFTs, whether you use them, don't use them, get the benefits of anything or not, buying them and allowing the musician to interact with you on that level and have that level of autonomy is actually great for the musician. So you're still doing a great thing in supporting them, and also buying something of value at a price point that they've tried to care for, as opposed to having them fight for that same income on platforms. So that's one thought. The second thing is that when it comes to investing or buying assets in general, if you're buying anything on the stock market, you then needed a setup. So you get your own setup, whether it's a brokerage, whether it's a broker, whether you're doing it yourself. Then you're like, okay, well, these are different techs I can invest in. These are different companies I can invest in. It's like, maybe you're like, this all seems really boring. I don't know dick about, I don't know, this tech or that tech, and these numbers or letters look cool. I should maybe, and this person said this and that. A lot of people who are younger are not particularly passionate about learning about the ins and outs of different companies and what they're doing. What they are passionate about is artists, is creativity. And that's humanity across the board, right? So a lot of people just don't invest because they're like, it feels like it's a separate world and I might need a business manager and I don't know how to approach it. But if you're like, but I believe in this artist, and I can invest in this artist the same way I could invest in a stock, for example, by buying an NFT and potentially seeing an upside. So essentially allows people to also bet on their beliefs instead of going, I can only bet on companies that are part of different setups, whether it's the stock market or whether it's just different tiers of investment. Now I can actually go, well, I really like that artist and I want to buy something cool and maybe one day it'll be worth something. And that way you're able to invest in the things you're actually passionate about. That's another thing NFTs do by giving us this capability of being able to fractionalize ownership in an authenticated way using certifiable tech on the blockchain. You are then able to have people participate in buying assets that pertain to things that might grow that they're actually passionate about and understand. Now, if you understand the artist and you understand things, you might just buy it because you want it, but you might buy it because you think, well, actually, this might go somewhere, and it allows you to do that.
Awesome. Beautiful. Yeah. I want to wrap up our conversation in terms of your concerns for the future and your hopes for the future, you know, like really thinking far ahead. You know, if this was 2005 and we're talking about Web2, we might be talking about some of the same things. And now we're in 2022 and we're like, oh, not everything's so great. So, you know, what is your dystopian future? And then to end on a positive note, you know, what is your utopian future?
Utopia is a big word. Dystopia is so much easier to achieve than the fucking shitheads that we are as humans. I think that, you know, being able to track people's movements, having governments with systems of power that are able to track your movements and decide for you what you can and can't do is a massive limitation on freedom of expression, on living, and actually the type of restricted world I think we've all wanted to avoid. throughout our lifetimes, and seeing what's happening in Iran now, seeing what happened throughout the Arab Spring, seeing what happens in Hong Kong, seeing what happens in different parts of the world throughout humanity. And I only use those as recent cases. For example, the revolution in Lebanon. When you have a government or an entity of power that is deciding what you can and can't do with your life, this is your entity, this is your spark that you've been given to live on this earth as you please. Everybody wants income, a job that they're passionate about would be great, someone to love, family, a place in the sun, essentially. We all want the same thing. So having power entities decide how you can spend this little time you have on the planet and restrict your freedoms, as we've seen, it's what the whole world revolts against time and time again. So blockchain tech can, obviously, there are huge institutions and institutional buyers that are manipulating the market now, which we're seeing weekly, monthly. When too much of that power can take a hold of something that can watch and scrutinize so much of people's behaviors, then we enter a world where we could be controlled at a much deeper extent than we are now. We all have smartphones. We're all being tracked anyway. The fact that Target, if you go and buy baby wipes, might send you an ad for like your newborn baby in the mail. You're like, how the fuck did this happen? They've been tracking us for ages. Even watching the US talk about masks and freedom, I'm like, if you have a smartphone, if you have a credit card, and if you've ever shopped at Target, if you have any of these three things, you've shopped with plastic at Target, you're being watched. You already have so much of your behavior being tracked. If you're on any social media platform, when you see what's actually being tracked, you realize how much is being tracked. And yet we still have just enough freedom. If we take blockchain tech and we go to a further step where, again, the government can say, you cannot rent that car, you cannot get that hotel room, you cannot buy this set of shoes, you can't do this, you can't do that. That to me is a dystopian world. And I think that we have some time before quantum computing catches up and actually unravels blockchain tech. So this is the next step, but quantum computing processing at the speed that it will then be able to actually then crack the blocks in a blockchain chain. And essentially that changes the face of tech again. So we're going to continue to evolve. We're going to continue to iterate. We're going to continue to build. And to me, it's less about the tech and it's more about what we put into the tech. Like I said, with AI, the more information that we put in about ourselves to AI, the more it will mimic what we're doing. And right now what we have is wars, and we have fighting, and we have all sorts of things that goes on with humanity. So if you take that metaphor and you go blockchain, if the same powers that be try and do the same things, they're just going to have more powerful tech to do it, for better and worse. So I would say that moving more towards a protopian life potentially would be that as much as there are powers that be, the powers that be became powers that be because people started things. Google at the beginning was just a website. Amazon, we've all seen the pictures of Jeff Bezos in his one room with Relentless or Amazon sprayed on the wall. Do you know what I mean? Like, they all start somewhere. Big ideas start small. Now we have an entire clean slate, I would say, to start small with new projects, whether it's blockchain privacy, whether it's blockchain identity protection, whether it's insurance on the blockchain, whether it's social media on the blockchain, whatever it is. There are so many interesting ways to use this tech to shape the way we live our lives. And the decentralized aspect, although not something that I think will be the new world order, as much as it would be very fucking cool, because there's already too much power that will control that, the fact that we will be able to, and we are already able to, share ownership in projects, companies, and build things means that we're actually able to share wealth across a larger number of people. Instead of one person owning a building, 100 people can then partake in owning that building with a system that can be efficient and secure and set up. And so great, now you don't need to be ultra wealthy to participate. You can have a bit of money and then make some passive income. And those models are going to help people live, sustain, get some passive income, share in things that they won't be able to share in before, buy things they weren't able to buy before with fractionalized ownership. And that brings us to a bit more of a positive world where people are then able to have a bit more for themselves. People are living paycheck to paycheck. So having anything that can supplement your income or diversify your portfolios instead of I have to then invest in this company. Well, I bought this NFT of this artist. That's my portfolio diversification. It's now worth more. Cool. It can help share ownership. It can help dismantle the current power structures that we know and help democratize power a bit. I say a bit because, again, that's an incredibly, we went from kings and queens to governments to then different setups and privatized institutions. So it's very, very micro movements. But again, it all shapes the ultimate view of humanity. So dystopian would be loss of freedom, controlled by governments and what we see as dark now, but just being harsher. And then protopian, more shared ownership, more ability to create your own things with communities and be less dependent on a government, less dependent on the powers that be, less dependent on one or two wealthy individuals, and more community-based sharing and voting, having a part of actually helping communities and micro communities build.
That's wonderful. And I actually share that vision. So it's really great to hear you say that. I think that that's what attracts me about this space. That's the hope that I have for the future as well. And I want to thank you for sharing it. And thank you for talking with me today and sharing all of your wisdom and insights. It's going to be super informational for not only my students, but the public at large. I wish you all the best in all of your endeavors. You are so brilliant. And I'm so thankful to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to chat to you. I loved your questions and I love your perspective. So thank you for giving me a space to rabbit on about all sorts of randomness. I appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure.